Alright, so this is what I'm going to try to get started today. I'm going to try to start on the block, taking the oil pan off, and getting to the crank, maybe take the oil pump off as well. So my original goal was to put the this main engine mount, this main motor mount here, back in temporarily. But at the time I wasn't thinking, and that main motor mount secures the cylinder head. Yeah, this is the cam cover. The cam cover here bolts to the cylinder head, and those two bolts go through here. So I'm not ready to put the cylinder head back on, so there's nothing for this motor mount to actually bolt to. So I can't actually use that method. So I just did the best that I could. Since the manual, they don't recommend, you know, doing this kind of thing with the engine in the car, but I don't have an engine mount. So what I did to try to support the engine is under the transmission here, or the housing. I have one stand here, and I have another stand here. Just don't put it on this hose, and you should be okay. The majority of the weight's being held up by this. I actually had this one by itself originally, and it was holding up enough. I didn't want a lot of pressure on that, so this was actually a little bit higher. But so the first thing I'm gonna do to get this oil pan off, and it's tight in here, so I see why it's a pain to do this without removing the block. But I'm gonna drain the oil just like you normally would. And I looked up in here, and there looks to be 10mm bolts all the way around the pan. And the pan's pretty long. You know, when you look at it under here, you just think it's this part, but it goes all the way over to here. So I'm gonna take out the catalytic converter, probably, which will mean this bracket here is probably gonna come out. Which, yeah, this whole bracket's probably gonna come out, so I can pull that catalytic converter out. I can probably unhook it right there if I can get those to break free. I'm not sure that I can. And then it'll get this piece out of my way. Let's see what else is up here. On this side, I'm pretty sure this is one of the main coolant lines. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's the main coolant line. I think the line can stay, but the bracket is mounted to the oil pan, so that bracket at least has got to come off. So I'm going to drain the oil, and I'm going to start removing those pieces so I can get to the oil pan. And I will video if anything interesting pops up. Alright, so before you take off the catalytic converter, that whole piece is a little bit heavier than it looks, so you may want to do what I did here. And so I wrapped a piece of just cheap steel wire around the head of this, and I tied it to my hood just to keep it from falling on me when I remove those brackets. And because it can get kind of awkward supporting that under there while you're trying to remove the rest of the brackets. So, just a little tip there. So, the bolts that hold the this intake manifold bracket in place, the impact couldn't take those off, or my little cordless impact couldn't take those off. They were on there pretty tight. So, you may want to PV blast those ahead of time. You know, I didn't. I had to use a breaker bar with a long extension to bust those loose. So yeah, if you're planning on doing this, those two would be good to spray some PV blaster on. Okay, another quick point on that is that I could get the back one off with a little cordless impact. That was no problem. It was this one right here, and as you can see, those threads are pretty corroded because that is the bolt that sticks. It goes right here, and I guess it gets exposed to you know, air and everything else, because I believe it even sticks out that side a little bit. So maybe not the head of the bolt area to PV blast, because as you can see, that's really clean and that wouldn't be a problem to take out. But maybe this back side, if you can get some to spray down in the threads there. Okay, so here's the catalytic converter pulled out and the brackets that hold it in that were going to be in the way. I left the O2 sensor in. There's no real reason to take that out unless you're wanting to replace it. And I had to unplug this. I hadn't unplugged that yet. And these unplug. I really wish I had took a video of me when I first took the head out of the car, because there were seemed like several dozen plugs that unplugged in various different ways. A few of which I've broke, but not to the point where they won't work. But yeah, you just push down on this little latch here and it breaks open. So I'm actually a little surprised there wasn't any remnants of a gasket or a seal or anything. You know, for up here, you know, there's a seal you put in, because this is a new one when I replaced the exhaust manifold previously. But there was nothing that I could find back here. Just, you know, even old, you know, at this point it'd probably be, you know, breaking apart, just really brittle, but there was nothing. So I'm pretty surprised there's no exhaust leaks here. I'll have to check my rebuild kit and see if it comes with one. I'm not sure if it will. But anyway, that's out, so I'm going to move on to the coolant line. Alright, so I got all the oil pan bolts out. All of them are fairly easy to get to after you've removed all the stuff that's kind of blocking the oil pan. Let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's eight bolts, plus the ones that hold this bracket in. They're on the oil pan as well. I can't get it to break its seal on its own, so I'm just gonna try tapping it with a rubber mallet to see if I can get it to break the seal. I've looked around several times and I don't see anything else holding it on there. I think it's just sealed up there pretty good. So I'm gonna try to tap this. Worst case scenario, I'll see if I can slide just a little bit of a pry bar in there and see if I can get it to pop the seal. Alright, quick correction to what I was just doing there. Before I started beating on the oil pan, I really wanted to check one more time because I didn't think it'd be so hard to pull off. And sure enough, I looked on the back. This is this bracket is connected to the oil pan as well, but it's connected with these little bolts or these little nuts here, and I had already taken those off and pulled this piece off. The intake manifold is bolted on right here, so I went ahead and pulled this off, and there was just these little studs sticking out of the bottom. Those studs that this nut's on, and I thought they were just you know, kind of built into the pan or something, or I thought they were just extended from the block. So I didn't think anything of it, but sure enough, no, they had there was a nut there. So that was a 13mm, I believe. So it's a little bit different than the other bolts on the oil pan. Yeah, 13mm, this one under here. But after I took these two bolts out, then yeah, oil pan dropped right down on its own. So that's actually makes 10 bolts, 2 of which have a different sized post coming out of the bottom to hold this bracket on. So no need to beat anything. Okay, something else I do, I'm kind of cleaning up my area here because I've come to the point where I've got enough stuff pulled apart that I don't want to get anything mixed up. So what I've been doing during this rebuild so far is I have a whole trunk. The actual car itself is full of separated baggies and plastic bags of parts that are going to go back in the car eventually. If you do this all the time, this is probably unnecessary. If you can look at the part and know exactly what it's for, or look at a set of bolts and know exactly what it's for. I'm not that person, I don't do this that often. So what I'm going to do is I've been using index cards and cardstock. So this is a piece of cardstock here, and I'm just going to call it oil pan bolts. And of course you can look up in your service manual and get the actual name for some of these parts, but I'm just writing them down where I can remember them. There's that piece with the 2 studs that connects the block to the intake manifold. So it's a intake bracket, and that's how I will remember it. And so I'm just going to cut those little slips up, and I'm going to put it in the baggie, in the plastic bag with the parts that are going into the trunk of the car with the pile of other parts. This is kind of how I'm trying to stay organized, simply because I don't have a garage to have everything laid out in, and my workshop is kind of full of dirt bikes. and other things. So that's kind of how I've been staying organized while I'm doing this rebuild. Just thought I'd point that out to you. Alright, so the oil pan's out, and it is filthy. So I'm going to clean this thing up. Of course, I'm going to take off the old gasket and put a new one in, but I'll probably just clean it up for now because I'm not ready to put this back. And I think I'll use a little sealant around these edges too when I put it back in. Looks like that's what they did at the factory. Yeah. So I'm sure the service manual will tell you if you need to do that or not. So, alright, so I'm going to pull this out, get this cleaned up, and then I'm going to move on to the oil pump, which is going to require a little more work. I'm pretty sure, and I'll read the manual before I start unbolting everything, but I know this is this oil strainer, and I know this is going to come off. There's a little screen in there for that, and there's little pieces of metal in it. Nice. Well, doing its job, I guess. But, alright, so I'm going to take this off, this strainer screen tube. And I believe the oil pump is up there, but I think I'm going to have to take off some of the timing belt pulleys or whatever over there on that side. Get into the pistons. We're not far from it. This shield's going to have to come off. Again, not sure of the name. I'm sure I will correct myself in a later video. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off and then move on to the oil pump. So you can remove the oil strainer with a 5mm Allen key. So you can also go ahead and remove, before you get to the oil pump, you can go ahead and remove the oil filter as well. This is really a shame because before this one blew, I had just changed the oil not more than like 200 miles before the seat dropped. And so this is a pretty decent oil filter, and it also had Mobil 1 in it. So this would be a good time to enjoy changing your oil, because this will be the easiest it ever is to get to this oil filter. Okay, so I've been working on cleaning up this oil pan for about the last half hour. Not clean yet. I scraped the top edge where the gasket's going to be. I'll have to do the same thing underneath the block. But what I'm doing is I took the full powered solution of Purple Power, so it's not diluted with water, and I've just been spraying it, the outside of the pan. I've already scraped this because this had a bunch of old gasket stuck on it, so you have to do that. There's some sludginess or some really thick flaky varnish. I'm not sure what that would be classified as in the inside, so I went ahead and started soaking that too. That's a diluted solution because I don't have that much Purple Power. That's probably about 50-50. But yeah, I've just been spraying it and then spraying it off with the hose after it sits for about 5 minutes. Alright, on to the next thing. Alright guys, I'm fixing to take off the crankshaft damper bolt down there. And before I did that, I'd go ahead and show you what top dead center looks like for piston 1. And this is especially important when I'm going to be assembling everything, because the cam sprocket's going to have to be top dead center. The actual cam pulley, or the crank pulley down there, is going to have to be at top dead center as well. So top dead center for piston 1, there is a there's a VR sensor down here, and that's this thing right here. So there's on this sprocket down here, there is a missing tooth. If you see, there's a gap missing there where there's not a tooth. Top dead center for piston 1 is 9 tooth or 90 degrees from that missing tooth. So 9 teeth up from that one. And if you can count that, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's sitting right over the top of the 9th one. So that is top dead center for piston 1. And it should be pretty at the fully extended part of its stroke. Okay, That is the crankshaft damper bolt that holds this pulley in here. This is like a shield, or you can take this piece out too, and actually the manual told you to do it, but I don't feel like taking that out. So if you have a chain wrench, you can hold this pulley and you can break this free by hand. I don't have a chain wrench, but I do have my little cordless impact driver, and I know that it will probably break that free. Let's see if I can get it in there. It barely fits in here too, and it only fits when it's extended into the wheel hub. So it's a very tight fit, and this is using a 19mm socket. So. There's that. Okay, so I got the crankshaft damper out, which was kind of like that. And to do that, it was stuck on there pretty good, is I have an old handle for a hammer, like a spare, that I use for this kind of thing, or I'm going to now. I used that, and I gently tapped it from each side until it finally popped off of there with a rubber mallet. Okay, so last night when I was taking the crankshaft dampener off, I ran out of light and I didn't get a chance to get to the oil pump because it's some of the bolts for the oil pump are a tight fit. But I got around to it today. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to shoot any video of me removing this because I had a dozen other things to do today, and so I didn't have the extra time to stop and take footage. But anyway, I'll kind of show you how that goes on. So these are the old bolts. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. These are the main bolts here that hold the oil pump to the block. This is where the VR sensor, I believe, or this is some timing sensor, I think, but I think it's called VR sensor. This is where that mounts at. So that points to the teeth. Here, it's the piece that points to the teeth in this crankshaft pulley. So after we took the dampener off, the first thing I did today was I had to get this out. So the crankshaft sticking through here. There's nothing holding this on per se besides 145,000 miles of heat and grime. So I just had to kind of pop it free. And there's really no easy way to do that because that washer on the back, you know, it's stuck to it pretty good. And that washer on the back is not nearly as strong as this sprocket. So I was taking a large screwdriver and kind of working it from both sides, trying to pop it loose. And I did put a few dings into this washer. I hope that's not going to be a problem. I think the main purpose of this is to keep it off of that oil seal there. So I don't think me bending the edges of this is going to matter too much. But yeah, it wasn't that easy to pop that off. Just go slow and work it from both sides, and eventually it'll pop off. These have been cleaned as well. Obviously, it looked something like that when it was pulled off. So I'm trying to clean up everything as I go. But yeah, that's basically what I got to today. I just got the oil pump out. I started scraping some gaskets, and let me tell you, the gasket for this, it's like someone has super glued it to the block. You know, it didn't fall off. It doesn't peel off. It barely scrapes off. I mean, it is going to be a pain to get that off. And I don't have a good enough scraper. A flat razor knife was just taking way too long as well, so I may have to get a heavier scraper to help with that. But I got to be careful not to mess up the block, or nothing will ever seal properly again. But yeah. So, oh, by the way, the rebuild kit came with those gaskets, and so did the actual oil pump when I ordered it. The rebuild kit also came with this main seal here, and you know, so did this part. So I have some spares stuff laying around if I ever need it. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, this is the oil pump, and that's where your oil filter screws in, and that's where the oil pipe, you know, sits down over the oil pan. This piece, yeah, this piece right here. So actually, it's turned the other way, but you know, that sits down in the oil pan. Oh, and this has been cleaned as good as I could clean it. I think there's some footage of that previously, and this thing's just black, just filthy. Now this is as clean as I could get it, and this is, I mean, this is literally 30 minutes of scrubbing and soaking. And this gasket up here was, I did not want to come off. It's quite a pain, but you know, it makes me feel better about putting parts back in this car if they're somewhat clean. This was the end result of the oil pan after soaking it for a solid 24 hours, I think. Yeah, it's probably about 24 hours it soaked. And about 5 times during that 24-hour period, I scrubbed it with nylon brushes, and I also was spraying the outsides with Purple Power during that period. And yeah, if I just showed someone this oil pan, they would tell me I probably need to wash it. Trust me, it's been washed vigorously, and that's as clean as it's going to get. I'm done messing with it. But it was not perfect. So I guess I've heard people say if you're not good with the maintenance and you let your car get sludgy, it's going to remain sludgy forever. As much as I'm cleaning this stuff, there's still going to be varnish and flakes and little pieces of sludge in there that I'm not going to be able to get out. But it's going to be much better than it was. Yeah, that's about it. I think the next step for me is to remove the shield. There's like a crank shaft shield under the car. And I'm going to remove that and go ahead and maybe start knocking up some of the pistons. I think I'm to that point. That's where we are now. Thanks, guys.